HOA Karen mocked grandma's uniform, didn't know my wife's in the military. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and nostalgia, the kind of place where locals swapped stories over greasy hash browns. I was nursing a lukewarm mug, half listening to the clatter of plates, when Karen stormed in like she owned the joint. Her voice, sharp as a razor, sliced through the morning chatter, demanding everyone's attention. "Excuse me, who let this woman in here looking like she's playing dress-up?" Karen's sneer was aimed at Mrs. Delaney, the 80-year-old widow who'd been quietly sipping tea in the corner booth. Mrs. Delaney wore her late husband's old military uniform, the fabric faded but meticulously pressed, her trembling hands clutching a photo of him from their youth. It was Veterans Day, and she'd worn it to honor him, like she did every year. The diner's regulars knew her story, knew the weight of that uniform, but Karen didn't care about stories. She cared about being heard. "This is a disgrace," Karen continued, her voice climbing. "You can't just parade around in some costume like it's Halloween. It's disrespectful to real veterans." The room froze. Mrs. Delaney's eyes glistened, but she didn't speak. She never did when people stared. I felt my grip tighten on my mug. My wife, Sarah, was across town at the base, probably buried in paperwork. But I wish she were here. She'd know what to say. Me, I was just a guy trying to keep the peace. Karen wasn't new to our small town. As the self-appointed queen of the HOA, she'd made a name for herself nitpicking mailboxes and fining people for untrimmed hedges. But this was different. This was personal. Mrs. Delaney wasn't just some neighbor. She was a fixture, a living piece of our town's heart. Her husband had died in Vietnam, and she'd raised 3 kids alone while keeping his memory alive. Karen, with her pristine SUV and manicured nails, didn't know any of that. She didn't want to. The diner's owner, Pete, a burly guy with a soft spot for Mrs. Delaney, stepped out from behind the counter. "Karen, let it go. She's not hurting anyone." His voice was calm, but his eyes weren't. Karen spun on him, her blonde bob swinging like a weapon. "Not hurting anyone. This is a mockery. I'm calling the police. Stolen valor is a crime." A few customers gasped. Mrs. Delaney's hand shook harder, the photo slipping to the table. I stood, ready to say something, anything, but then the bell above the door jingled. In walked Tommy, the town's unofficial historian, a wiry guy in his 60s who spent his days digging through archives and chatting up old-timers. He carried a leather-bound notebook, as always, and his glasses were perched precariously on his nose. "What's all this noise?" he asked, scanning the room. His gaze landed on Karen, then Mrs. Delaney. He frowned, piecing it together. "Karen, you're making a fool of yourself," he said plainly. "That's not a costume. That's Captain Delaney's uniform. He earned a silver star. You'd know that if you ever listened." Karen's face twitched, but she doubled down. "Oh, please, Tommy. She's just some old lady playing pretend. Look at her. That uniform's practically falling apart." The words hit like a slap. Mrs. Delaney's shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I thought she might break. I stepped forward, my voice low but firm. "Karen, you need to stop." She turned her glare on me. "Oh, what? You're defending this typical. You're all so small town. You can't see when someone's making a mockery of something serious." That's when the air shifted. The bell jingled again, and there was Sarah, my wife, in her crisp army uniform, the one she wore when she wasn't stuck in an office. Medals pinned to her chest, boots polished to a mirror shine. The diner went silent, save for the faint hum of the coffee maker. Sarah's eyes locked onto Karen, then softened as they found Mrs. Delaney. She crossed the room in 3 strides, her presence commanding without a word. "Mrs. Delaney," Sarah said gently, kneeling beside the booth. "You look proud today." Mrs. Delaney managed a small smile, her fingers brushing the uniform sleeve. Sarah stood, turning to Karen, who was suddenly very interested in her phone. "You got something to say about this uniform." Sarah's voice was calm, but there was steel in it. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to being challenged. Not like this. I didn't mean, Karen stammered. But Sarah cut her off. You meant every word. You walked in here, saw a woman honoring her husband's sacrifice, and decided to tear her down. Why? Because it made you feel big. The room was a pressure cooker now. Every eye on Karen. She tried to laugh it off, but it came out shrill. This is ridiculous. I was just pointing out the truth that uniform doesn't even fit her. That's when Tommy spoke up again, his voice quieter but no less sharp. You want truth? Karen, Captain Delaney's uniform doesn't fit because Mrs. Delaney hasn't eaten properly in months. She's been giving her grocery money to the veterans shelter. You'd know that if you ever stepped foot in this community instead of just ruling it. The twist landed like a punch. Karen's face paled. The diner's regulars murmured, some nodding, others glaring. I hadn't known about Mrs. Delaney's sacrifices either, and the guilt hit me hard. Sarah's jaw tightened, her eyes never leaving Karen. You think you can judge her? Sarah said, stepping closer. You think you get to decide what honor looks like? I've served for 12 years. I've seen what sacrifice means. It's not your HOA rules or your perfect lawn. It's her. Right there, she pointed to Mrs. Delaney, who was now clutching the photo to her chest, tears streaming down her face. The diner was a powder keg, and Karen was the spark. Karen tried to backpedal, her voice rising. This is absurd. You're all ganging up on me. I'm just trying to protect our veterans, but the room wasn't buying it. Pete crossed his arms, his voice booming. You don't protect anyone. Karen, you bully. You've been terrorizing this town for years, fining people for stupid things, yelling at kids for playing too loud. You broke Mrs. Delaney's table last month because it was unsightly. And now this, the broken table. I remembered it now, Mrs. Delaney's porch, where she'd sit and tell stories, reduced to splinters because Karen deemed it an eyesore. The damage wasn't just emotional, it was tangible. A piece of her history gone. Sarah took another step, her voice low but lethal. You want to talk about stolen valor? Let's talk about you. You strut around like you're the moral compass of this town, but you're just a coward who picks on people who can't fight back. Mrs. Delaney's husband gave everything. What have you given? Karen's face was a mask of panic now, her eyes darting for an exit. The diner's regulars were on their feet, some shouting, others clapping. A waitress, barely 20, slammed a tray down and yelled, "Get out! Karen!" The room erupted, a chorus of anger and agreement. Karen grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. You're all insane. I'll sue. I'll have this place shut down. But her threats were hollow, drowned out by the crowd. Sarah didn't move, didn't raise her voice. She just stared, unyielding, until Karen bolted for the door, nearly tripping over a chair. The bell jingled as she fled, her SUV peeling out of the lot. The diner exhaled, the tension breaking like a wave. Sarah knelt beside Mrs. Delaney again, her voice soft. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Mrs. Delaney shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. It's not your fault. Dear, you remind me of him. She touched Sarah's uniform, then her own. I felt a lump in my throat. The room was quiet now, but it wasn't empty. There was a weight to it, a shared understanding. Pete comped Mrs. Delaney's meal, and the regulars started passing a hat around, collecting cash for her groceries. Tommy sat down with his notebook, jotting down the story, probably for the town paper. I looked at Sarah, my chest swelling with pride. She wasn't just my wife, she was a force, a protector of what mattered. Mrs. Delaney stood, slow but steady, and saluted Sarah. Sarah returned it, crisp and perfect. The diner clapped, not loud, but real. Later, as we walked home, Sarah told me Karen had already posted a rant online, claiming she was the victim. It didn't matter. The town had seen her for what she was. The veterans shelter got a flood of donations that week, and Mrs. Delaney's porch got a new table, built by Pete's brother. Karen's HOA meeting started shrinking, her fines ignored. She'd overplayed her hand, and the town was done bowing to her. What do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved? Or was she just misunderstood? Share your thoughts. I'm curious.